Battalion 1.
We just had a plane crash into Alpha 4 of the World Trade Center. Transmitter.
Welcome to Jack 2-3. When you see any movement in there, I want you to hit it. Out.
Roger. We're taking fire from airplane. Building 112.
421, eastbound, red Pontiac G6, near passenger, George, Robert, X-ray.
Car standby. Car standby. 50 officer.
Trade Center, tower number 1 is on fire. The whole outside of the building, there was just a huge explosion.
Right outside the building, 33. Right outside the building.
Super excited to be here today. Big day for us. Not only that it's our first podcast, but with the first podcast, my good friend Paul Lindbergh is here with us. Also going to be one of the co-hosts of our show. So super excited to be here today with Paul and just have some conversations, man.
Yeah, man. I'm pumped to be here. It's we've come a long way over the last year, you know. Like, I had heard your name and I had a lot of my buddies say, you got to meet this guy, you got to meet this guy, and then
It's been regret ever since, huh?
yeah, I know. Now my life's just downhill from there.
Welcome, bro. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, man, super excited. I'm looking forward to this journey. So today I just want to take some time and let the listeners kind of learn a little bit about Paul and,
Sure.
you know, just have some conversations, man. So
Let's do it.
yeah, let's jump in. So where'd you grow up?
Eastside of Evansville, actually. Arcadian Acres, actually, to be exact. I spent a lot of time riding my bike up to the Washington Square Mall and all of that, and went to Christ the King, and I went to Memorial High School, so I was an East Sider through and through. Even though my dad is a West Sider, grew up in Howell Park, so I kind of got some West Side roots, if you want to call it that, but no West Sider would ever admit to that, so I'll take it.
Awesome. What about
Yeah.
where'd you end up in high school?
Went to Memorial, and I graduated in 2002. I get dates confused all the time, especially in 20 years ago. But yeah, 2002. I always want to think it's 2004. 2004 is when I joined the Marine Corps, but 2002 graduated. Went to Ball State for a year, which was weird. I was actually a film student, which not a lot of people know that. And when I tell people what I used to do when I was in the Marine Corps, they're just kind of like, what?
The same look I just gave you?
Yeah. Like a film student? Like, yeah, I was like really into art and film. I was in a band, and I mean, I grew up playing sports, and I had a pretty bad eye injury when I was a freshman. And like, I was a jock, like wrestling, football, baseball, real into it. And then I hurt my eye playing baseball. And then it was like, hey, you know, I mean, it's still, I mean, bad, to where depth perception wasn't really there. And so trying to catch or hit was pretty difficult, at least, especially early on. I mean, it's been 25 years now, so I've gotten used to it. But
Was that your freshman year, you said?
yeah,
Man,
freshman
that's
year
tough.
summer. I mean, I still remember driving home from Indianapolis after the specialist saw it and was just like, hey, man, you're not going to be able to play baseball ever again. And like, I thought for sure that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty good life lesson there. And then I really just started listening to music and, you know, some other influences along the way in high school, and joined a band, and we did played all kinds of shows and ran around, and it was fun. Like, I really embraced it, and I got really into film and wanting to make movies, and we would make little movies here and there and little horror movies or whatever, and it was a lot of fun. And I was like, all right, I'll go to Ball State, because 3 of my friends went there, so we went up there, and, you know, I did good. I mean, I didn't go fail out, but it was like, what am I doing? This isn't what I want to do. And I just said, well, I'm wasting money and time up here. I'll move back home. And I went to USI for a half a semester, maybe. Same thing, film, you know. And then I was like, all right, I'm done with this. I remember specifically when I was done, I was with my which you know, Josh Patterson.
Yeah.
I was with Josh, and we were up at Ball State, and they had this, I think the Marine Corps or the Army had this free event you could go to where you could go up in an airplane and fly it, like a dual cockpit thing. And he got up in the cockpit first. It was a little tiny plane. And I sat in the back, and there was a news crew with me, like a reporter. She was sitting directly in front of me, facing me, closer than we are now. And then her cameraman. And as soon as we get off in the air, about 2 minutes into it, I start feeling it. And I'm like, oh, God, this is not good. I'm going to throw up. And he's banking and doing all this stuff. And I grab this bag, and I just throw up in it, like 2 feet from this lady. And she's gagging. And then the guy next to me starts gagging because it was a paper bag that held a plastic bag, but the plastic bag was gone. So the bottom of the bag was like blip, 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 and I'm trying to hold this barf in this bag, and I feel horrible. She starts throwing up, and I'm just like, dude, what did I do? And as soon as we landed, I was just like, I hate flying. I don't ever want to fly again, but that was cool. Like, I feel like I need to join the Marine Corps now. I don't know why the connection was there, but I was always already leaning that way. And, we started doing that. And then I just, I'd always been fascinated with the military. I mean, even as a kid, all the 80s action heroes were always huge influences. And both my grandfathers were in World War II, but they're my only real family that had served that I know about. And I was just like, well, 9/11 had happened a year prior to that. And I was just like, well, I think I know what I'm going to do. And I didn't get recruited. I just walked in the recruiter's office, went straight to the Marine Corps and just said, hey, I want to join the Marine Corps, and I want to be in the infantry.
So why the Marine Corps? Was there something special that stood out about that?
Probably a really good marketing plan. They had the best commercials. There was something about, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it all the way. And I want the hardest and the toughest thing that they offered. And the Marine Corps seemed to fit that bill. I know I had talked to an Army recruiter in high school at lunch one day, and he was really into telling me about all this money we could make and sign-on bonuses and this and that, and you can do this and the other, and it kind of turned me off. I was like, man, I'm not
a sales pitch,
not doing this to, get a enlistment bonus. I mean, it'd be nice. You don't get those in the Marine Corps. So I kind of like that. It was more of doing it for being able to serve rather than all of these benefits you can get from it. Like, they didn't pitch college or money or, a great life. They were just like, hey, you're coming here to do hard things. And we're in a time of war, and there's a good chance you could get hurt or worse. Do you want to do it? I mean, yeah, obviously.
So was that always your mentality as a kid? Did you always kind of want more or pick the challenge? Or is that something you think that you picked up more from age or the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think every young man has something kind of inherent in them of like a call to adventure, right? I think we're born with it. There's always this call to go out and kind of explore an adventure and just discover new things. I've always been driven by that, always been like, what's next? So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it all the way, or I'm not going to do it. There's no in between really with me. It's either all the way or not at all. And sadly, I think a lot of that, I think it still exists today, but I think a lot of it is really tampered down or easily ignored by social media and video games and everything else, TV. And I think that it's hard for young men nowadays to even hear it or even be able to respond because they're so comfortable. So growing up in the 90s, I mean, we lived comfortable lives, but we were also afforded an opportunity to really get out there and do things a little bit more dangerous than kids are today, because we didn't have as many distractions as they do today. So, I mean, that kind of call really drove me, hey, you can live on your own, and you can travel across the world, and you can, do all these things. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
And I think I agree with you there. It's unfortunate, and I've even seen it a little bit with my kids. It's today's society. It's not really pushed to get out there and explore and quote, be a man, go do these things, the hard things. It's more of like, well, if it's uncomfortable, try something else instead of work the problem, finish what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's unfortunately what's really pushed these days. And that's one thing in my sons that I really try to focus on is like, no, we're not going to quit because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We're going to finish it.
Yeah.
And that's, nobody grows in comfort.
No, you don't. You have to have moments of just suffering and trials to even be able to, I guess, kind of fully come into who you are. I mean, man, there's so many quotes about this, but it's just like, why? I don't get the incessant kind of need to kind of cower around your kids and make sure that they're comfortable. I mean, safety is one thing. We all have that inherent to us, but the comfortability that is required for everybody. I mean, not just kids, I mean, grown adults, like any amount of discomfort, and it's, they're going to a therapist to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like, my goodness, well, my kids hear this all the time. They're stuck on something. I always just say, negotiate the obstacle. That was something that they would yell at us at selection, which we'll get to that. But you have these kind of tasks that are impossible, but you have some that you can solve. They're just hard. Negotiate it, figure it out. I'm not going to hold your hand. I can help you, but kind of encouraging kids to go and do dangerous things, but not something that's going to immediately, result in them dying.
Right.
You want to get them up to that point, but you don't want to cross that line, and it's hard to find sometimes.
Yeah. We kind of have this thing in my house with my sons. My daughter, she can do whatever she wants, but my son's a little different, but it's, they come to me with a problem and, hey, Dad, what should I do about this? Instead of just giving my opinion, I'm like, what do you think you should do about it? Right. So I want them to think.
Oh yeah.
And if they give a response that I may not agree with, I'll be like, well, what do you think about this? But at least regurgitate it back to them, make them think, and then spit it back to me. It's kind of, sometimes you see the light bulb go off like, oh, I just answered myself. Yeah. You don't need your old man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, figure it out, bro.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. I mean, every time my kids get hurt or, I'll address it, but if it's something that's, they fell down and skinned their knee, I'll give them that comfort. Of course. And I always say, did you learn something? Or what did you learn? And they're like, oh yeah, maybe I should wear my helmet when I ride my bike. Wonder why me and your mom always tell you to do that? That's why.
They know.
So as long as they're learning.
Absolutely. So you go to, you join the Marines, you go to boot camp. What's that like?
I don't know. A lot of boot camp was kind of a blur. I was considered an old man in boot camp at 20 years old. A lot of kids were 18 and 17, but
you're old school, the old
you're
cat.
Old. So yeah, I was an old guy there. It was definitely different. I'll say that. I mean, I did some training before I got there, and I know that there's this big idea that, Marine Corps boot camp is just this physically demanding thing. I mean, it probably is for a lot of kids nowadays that don't ever go outside, but, you grow up playing sports. If you're a little bit athletic, you can get through it. It's funny hearing about it now because a lot of people ask you about boot camp, and I was like, boot camp, looking back on it, was the easiest thing I did in the Marine Corps physically. I mean, it was definitely some mental, shaping there. There's a lot of breaking down and breaking through that, your expectations or your ego, or, I mean, a lot of drill instructors. I have some buddies that were drill instructors, and a lot of it, they say nowadays, is breaking down these kids into this, because they all come from this, entitlement of like, I deserve this and you can't talk to me like that type of attitude. And they have to break them of that. But no, I mean, boot camp was just, I don't know. It's so chaotic all day that all the days just kind of blur together. But you do learn one way or another, right? And all of the things that they do, it's really just to get everybody working as a single organism. Discipline is one of the biggest things they teach there. And I really got, I'll say I had discipline going into that, but I didn't on that level. That's probably the biggest thing I got from boot camp was just that initial, like that real sense of what discipline is. It's, doing things when it's horrible. Yeah. When you don't want to, or when you're tired or you're lazy, and it's fighting through that and doing it anyway, because it's the right thing to do. There was a lot of that. It was, I made some really good friends there too. I was actually just flipping through my yearbook. Somebody had mentioned a name of a guy that I recognize his name. He's from here. And I was like, man, I think that guy went to boot camp with me. So I pulled out the old book. And, I'm looking through it and I didn't see the guy. I was like, yeah, maybe I'm confused with somebody else. But then you look through it and you're like, oh man, I still talk to him. And of course there's a good number of them that aren't around anymore either. So It was kind of like, oh man, I remember that guy. So, boot camp was cool, man. It was like, it's like every other training, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's easier for me when I know like this isn't going to last forever. Right. There is a date where you graduate and yeah, it's 3 months away, but every day we're one day closer to that day. So they can't do this forever. And so like, just really getting through day by day is probably the best thing that I picked up. And that's how I handled it really set the groundwork for a lot of this follow-on training and assessments and selections that I've done since then, that have just focusing on that day and not trying to think too far forward. Yeah. It's there, right? And you want to think about it a lot, but you just, nope. What am I going to do today? Right. Let's focus on today. Let's get through today. We'll worry about tomorrow. And it's worked out.
Good. I think as men, we desire a purpose. I think that is a driving force. We have to know what our purpose is. Younger in my life, I really wasn't sure until the middle of police academy. It kind of hit me like, this is why Bryan Bishop was born, to do this. I knew it was my purpose. Yeah. At what point, was it in boot camp or was it after that? Did it really hit you like this is what Paul was made for?
Definitely wasn't boot camp. Because everything happens so fast, and every day, you're not sitting around, right? Like thinking about things. So everything happens so fast that it's over before you know it. And you go right into, in my case, I was an infantryman, so I went right to infantry school, which is a couple months long. And that's the same type of thing. They're not screaming at you, but you're through the fire hose learning, and you really they teach you to be a basic infantryman, all offensive and defensive tactics and patrolling and you name it, right? And I was really starting to build a lot of that, like forging some of these relationships that I still talk to some of these guys on like a weekly or monthly basis. And, that was a long time ago, but I think what kind of tied it in with me was, after infantry school, I went to 1st Battalion, 6th Marines. And right when I got there, it was like, hey, we're deploying in about 4 months, 5 months, something like that. And it was like, oh, this is real. We're doing it. So we, a lot of workup training and really getting to know some of the older guys and the guys that are my peer group. Cause we were the boots, the new guys, which was easy to identify because, the Marine Corps was in the tricolor woodland camis or the chocolate chip style camis for a while. And I was like the second or third boot camp class to actually switch over to digital camouflage. And when I got to the fleet, everybody was in tricolors except the brand new guys and their digitals. So,
here we are.
Yeah. I mean, they would see you across the parade deck, or, the field and just be like, new guys over here, we're doing this, you're, working party, you couldn't hide and blend in with the people. You were picked off a mile away. But yeah, my first deployment with them, I mean, it was like boot camp. And when I started boot camp, it was, 9 or 10 months later, I was in Fallujah, and that was my first deployment. And that's when you really got that sense of kind of purpose and kind of brotherhood. And, when you're looking around at these guys that you live with and you realize that these guys are, they determine or may determine if you're going to live or die, and it's your responsibility to them as well. And there's something about that just really, it really brings you close. And kind of that, when I said boot camp, kind of that discipline and that training in forming one cohesive organism, it's multiply that by 100 when you're deployed. And I mean, that type of like camaraderie and kind of brotherhood. I mean, at everything I've done, my time in the infantry, it was the tightest. I mean, just because you're thrown into some of these situations and, you experience things and you see things and you do things with these guys that you're never going to do with anybody else. It's like you have experiences that you really can't copy outside of that world. So I think when we started going over there, and it was I remember being a little confused or kind of cloudy on exactly what we were doing. Just like the whole general purpose. We just knew that, all right, trade centers got bombed or hit by the planes. Now we're at war with this country and we're going there to, do something. We weren't exactly sure what it was. I think that would have helped, if it was a little bit clearer. It's easy to look back on it now and be like, what was going on? But there was a good shared sense of purpose while we were there. And that purpose wasn't to win the hearts and minds of these people or liberate people. It was like, I'm here for that guy and that guy. I mean, it's a circumstantial thing and it probably sounds a little cold, but it was like the goalpost and the end result kept shifting every administration, every couple of years, or every new commander. So that was the one thing that was constant, were the guys that were with you. So, hey, if we're here, we're going to be here, we're going to work, but I'm making sure these guys are coming back with me.
Yeah.
So that was really where that purpose really came into effect full force.
So I want to circle back. I think, people would like to better understand, but, when you were told you're being deployed, what, in that moment, I'm sure there was mixed emotions, right? There's excitement, there's fear, there's the unknown.
Oh yeah.
Like what was that like?
You're initially excited. I mean, I was, because it's like, we just did all this, it's like from Braveheart, we didn't get all dressed up for nothing. We just did all this training. We're working to do this thing. We might as well implement it and put it to use. And I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't scared at all or didn't think about it, Of course. Anybody that says that they're not scared, and when I say scared, I don't mean trembling in a corner in the fetal position. I mean, you're just like, oh man, this is
it's real.
I could die.
Yeah.
My friends could die. There's always that a little bit, but that that gets, in my personal experience, I found that gets, like getting shot at, like it's scary at first because it's usually unknown. And it's like, oh man, somebody's shooting at me. Somebody's trying to kill me right now.
Yeah, these aren't sim rounds anymore.
Yeah. And it's just like, wow, this is a real thing that's happening. And then that switches, like training and that discipline kick in immediately. And I'm sure you can relate to a lot of that. And it just turns into, you go into full kind of training mode or being aggressive and anger even from time to time. And that's really what gets you through it, I think. And a lot of this stuff, it's almost like you're watching a movie sometimes. You're just reacting and you don't even necessarily, it's almost like you're almost not in control sometimes. You're just doing what your body, it's like muscle memory almost, where it's like, we don't have time to sit here and think about it and, tell them to pause real quick so we can figure ourselves out before we, shoot back at them. So it's really reactionary, but it's very, I think that's where all the training and discipline come in, is that reaction is towards survival and these survivability skills that you've learned along the way, not a reaction to just lay on the ground and hope it goes away or shut your eyes.
I've had a lot of people ask me, through my career, is like, how'd you deal with the quote fear or the unknown? And it's like you said, it's not the fetal position scared. It's just, this could be it, right? I mean, this just the unknown. And like you said, it's not to be cold, but you almost have to just go dark, right? I mean, you go numb.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you deal with that? Is there anything that you would do particularly, like when you were in those moments, to kind of focus back or to really?
I think what I would do, I mean, I have a pretty insane ability to compartmentalize. I think a lot of guys do in my situation. But when it comes to something like that, like getting ready, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it here. I back up real quick because I know you were talking. I remember, hey, you're going to deploy. I'm super excited, because all your guys are around, either falsely or genuinely yelling and screaming and pumped about it. And you're just kind of like, yeah, this is awesome. Okay, anyway. And then I remember right before we deployed, we had to go make wills. I was 20 years old writing a will. And it's just like, the two things that I own, I'll just give to my brother, I guess. I don't know. But then it hits you when you're planning out your death. It puts a perspective on what you're doing for sure. Because, I mean, especially this was in 2005, Fallujah was very much a pretty violent place still. And what did you ask right after that? Because I got lost on the track.
Just how you would deal with those unknown moments. How do you focus back up? And not let that overtake you, and still have a clear understanding of what the mission was, or what we're doing.
I think a lot of it was something that was an immediate threat to me. Right, address that threat. And then I would be constantly just focusing on helping wherever I could, in any capacity I could, the guys around me. Whether that was running over across a building and reinforcing a position where I know it's really heavy fire on my buddy that's in that post right now, or it's running ammo from here to there, or whatever it was. It was looking for something to do, and constantly trying to kind of be a force multiplier, like an asset rather than a liability. I mean, if people are shooting at you, but not directly at you, I mean, what am I going to sit and just, well, good luck over there. Right. I'm good over here. Right. It was always trying to, you have, junior Marines under your care. So it's always checking in on them, making sure they're good. Not just, are you alive, but are you good? Because it's a new experience for a lot of guys. And some people just handle it a little differently. Yeah. But yeah, like I would focus on work. I remember, it's funny because I just found a journal that I kept when I was in Ramadi after Fallujah. Like I kept a journal every day there, and I haven't read this thing in 20 something years. And I was flipping through it the other night, and I was just like, the things that, I was saying and doing then are a lot of things that I say and do now. And I'm wondering, sitting there thinking like, well, man, is this kind of where this, pattern started? I mean, probably clearly it did, but just like, this horrible thing happened, writing about it. And I was like, anyway, we had Salisbury steak in the chow hall today, and I'm just like, how does somebody go from that to that without just locking it up and tucking it away? It was, and I remember I had said this before, but I read it in there. I never, like we would lose guys all the time. Or, a sister company would lose guys, 2 blocks away from you or whatever. Right. So we all knew each other, but you'd lose guys. And we'd come back from a patrol or whatever. And, guys would be pretty upset and down. Some guys would be emotional, and I would just be all right, well, we got to go. We got to get ready to go. We got a patrol coming on. I remember thinking like, man, I would get upset that I wasn't more upset because everybody else was more upset. And I'd be like, man, is something wrong with me? Like, why am I not all sad about this? And it's like, it was a very weird feeling, but I think I just focused on work. Like, this is a job. I'm at work right now. Everything else happens or doesn't happen falls inside work. This is not me necessarily. It was kind of like, I'm sure it was a defense mechanism or, some kind of psychotherapy could explain it, but it was really just I would kind of put myself into a mindset before I left of everything that's good and about me or things that I loved and people that I loved. I would just kind of tuck them away and put them off to the side. And then this is work me, which is a completely different monster. Where, there's a necessity for aggression and violence and, everything else that comes along with it. The problem is getting that little thing I tucked away back.
Absolutely.
So, which I guess we're always still kind of working on, but yeah.
I don't know if that ever leaves once you live that lifestyle. It's, somebody said before about, it's a switch we turn on and off, right? And it's not a switch I necessarily ever want to lose. I want it there if I need it,
Yeah.
But now it's more of a dimmer switch for me.
Yeah.
I can turn it up and down as I need it.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Because I never want to lose it. I think God made me who I am, a protector.
That's right.
And, God forbid if I need to do that, I don't want to be looking for the switch. It's there.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to put it. I used to think like, it's crazy when you can see like what another man can do to a man, when you actually see it and you're like, this is, everything in your soul hurts when you see it, or you're disgusted, or you're just, mortified by it.
Yeah.
And that's on both sides, right? We're not out there, playing freeze tag, there's a lot of violence when it comes to it. And you see this and you start having these existential conversations with yourself of kind of, what does it all mean? And what am I doing? And where is this place that I'm at right now? And why are people treating people like this? And then it's also like, you start thinking about your own mortality, obviously, and you start thinking about your own kind of salvation in a way. And, I used to always kind of comfort myself and be like, there's gifts inherent to each person on earth, right? My gift just happens to be doing very violent things, and being able to carry on and continue to do them. And I always said, like, when you're looking for people to do terrible things, God's not, recruiting Boy Scouts to go do it. Everybody that I served with had a checkered past, we'll say, or they had some type of upbringing that kind of led them to that area. And I think it's a good place for them to be. Well, some, because you can see where it does the opposite effect on guys, and they start living and becoming that monster, and then they can't turn it off, and just tragic endings to a lot of those stories, which I'm sure is exactly the way police officers are or can be as well. There's just something about, I was talking to somebody the other day about this, but just these, sometimes you meet these, vets or even police that they're very proud of what they did or what they're doing. And it's almost where they start to embellish or lie about it. I mean, make up stories to make it sound cooler than it is. And I'm always just like, man, 1% of Americans serve. Like, the fact that you served is good enough. You don't have to compete. My wife always says, we're sharing, we're not comparing, right?
I love it.
It's just like, share your story, like, be proud of your story and what you've done, because a lot of people, you in my line of work now, I meet people all the time, I meet vets every day. And it's like, yeah, I was in the Guard, but I was just in the Guard and I didn't really do much, or I was a logistics guy. I'm like, that's awesome. Like,
somebody's got to do it.
Don't downplay that. Be proud of it. I remember being a young Marine, and the Marine Corps has this like scale of coolness, right? And there's like infantry guys, and then there's everybody else who wasn't in a combat MOS that were just not cool like the infantry guys were, because we fought in combat. Then there was like snipers, which were like higher than that. That was cooler than just a regular infantry guy. And then there was recon, which is cooler than that, and then it's MARSOC, and there's this chain of this kind of level of coolness that a lot of guys chase. And if they're not at a certain thing, they always tend to like downplay what they're doing. And I'm just like, I remember being a young infantryman, and I would talk trash about the other, MOSs all the time. Like, oh yeah, just a pogue, somebody that's not a grunt. And until, you start, I remember being out, I was out in Afghanistan and had not taken a shower in about 3 months, living in a hole in the ground, eating, an MRE every day. And this logistics 7-ton just pulls in one day and hands us all fresh underwear. And it was the greatest thing I ever had. And I was just like, that day I was like, I will never talk trash about any support unit ever again, because these dudes didn't have to do this. And they're going on the same dangerous roads that we're on every day with none of the training. And they're out there just so we could have a hot meal and some underwear. And I was like, that's solid. That's legit. And always remember those guys. So
perspective, man, how it always changes.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. So that was, your first deployment is infantry.
Yep.
Get back from that. And then, what's next after that?
Gosh, I mean, you come home from something like that, you feel like you're Superman, like you've defied the odds and you lived and you're bulletproof and you save some money while you're there. Then you go and you blow it all. And that's exactly what I did, just partied and blew it all. And, 6 months later, we knew we were going back out. So it's like, well, I could sit here and save all this money and die on the next deployment, so I might as well enjoy it, so, which is terrible advice. So do not live like that. I mean, it sounds kind of morbid, but it's kind of like, I never looked past, like in the future. It was always like, well, this is going to get me one day, so I'm just going to enjoy this. Probably not the best way to live, especially when when I think about if I would have invested some of that money and, be a lot better off today, but I wouldn't have had as much fun, I guess. But no, so 6 months later, we went to Ramadi, same unit. I had a little bit, I was the point man in Fallujah, so I was in the front of all the patrols. And then Ramadi, I was a fire team leader, so it means I had 3 Marines that were under me that I was in charge of. A lot of the same kind of tactics. Ramadi was like a step above Fallujah for the time frames I was in both. It was the most dangerous place I've ever been. We had a building occupied right in the middle of the city, and we'd patrol out of it and, clear places and go on raids or whatever it was. But a lot of sitting on a post, defending that building from people who would attack us, which they would attack us almost every day. And it was like it was different. It's different when you're in even the leadership role, when I was responsible for 3 people. I wasn't just responsible for myself anymore, like actually responsible for 3 people. So you try to, just get them as prepared as they can from, you feel like you know it all when you deploy once, I've got this thing figured out. Follow me and I'll show you. That's, more than they do, but that's not saying much, Right. It's a different place. It's a different city, a different time, different tactics. I mean, you just, you got to go with what you know and just kind of fake it till you make it a lot of times, sadly. But that journal was, I'm reading it, as a 42-year-old man now, and just like, man, I forgot how like crazy that place was. And you're talking about all these things that you're experiencing and you're doing, and you're just like, I was 23 when I went there.
Kid.
Yeah, I know. My frontal lobe wasn't even fully developed yet, and you're experiencing these things, and I think it obviously is going to shape your character, especially when you're not even fully matured as an adult yet. You're doing and experiencing things that are not part of the normal human experience in our day and age. Now, thousands, hundreds of thousands and all that, 100 years ago up to thousands of years before that, humanity was just always in some type of struggle or warfare or combat or, you name it. We've been so comforted over the last, 100 or so years that it's really kind of softened a lot of that as far as mentally goes, and physically too, I would say. But a lot of these folks that we were fighting, a lot of that's the same way it was 1,000 years ago. They're the same type of mindset and the way they live and the culture, at least parts of it, not all of it. And there was a lot of really just, the biggest mistake I think a lot of guys made were saying that Fallujah is just like Ramadi, and no 2 places are the same. They're not even the same on the same day. And we did a lot of, every time we would go out during the day, we'd come back with casualties. Guys were getting killed left and right going out during the day. So we stopped. We went out at night only. We just started kind of owning the night, as you would put it, and it was really helpful. But I could see myself in there writing, about this gunfight or that gunfight, and, all the gory details of it, and then just switching gears and talking about, home or food or sleep. And I'm looking at it now and I was like, man, like, what was I doing? And I've had it explained to me that it was just, it was a survival technique.
Yeah.
You had to do things certain ways so you could live that day and in that moment, in that time. And I think a big problem a lot of guys have when they get out is they stay in that mode. And you see this like kind of hypervigilance and this kind of isolating and not to say that that's for nothing, right? There's always a chance something could happen, but like the likelihood is far less than in the middle of a combat zone. So it's trying, and instead of like, I guess my point is like not ignoring that survival, but learning how to adapt that to now, to everyday life now. Like have that edge, but not, over the top. Because I remember rolling into Camp Ramadi, there was a huge sign that said complacency kills. And, staying vigilant was like, stay vigilant, stay vigilant. And I used to tell guys all the time, like that first day, that first patrol, I said, I want you to remember what this feels like. Because in 4 months, I want you to remember, because you're going to say, oh, it's just another patrol. Let's go do it. I've done this 1,000 times. And no, I want you to remember what this feels like. Because that's the same kind of feeling you need to have going into every one of these. You start getting complacent, that's when people start dying. You get sloppy. So I don't know if it ever took hold, but
that's what I was going to ask you too. You're 23, some sort of a team leader now. You got these other cats under you. I'm sure in your career like mine, we had some great leaders and some not so great leaders.
Sure.
Right. And we try to take away the things that we like and we don't like. And, so when you stepped into that leadership role, were there certain things from your experience with other leaders you're like, I'm not going to be that dude, or I'm going to be like that dude? Like, is there certain things you think that forged you to be the leader that you were to these young guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I carry that principle even in my life today. I mean, you can learn something from every single person you meet. I mean, every day. And so a lot of times it'll shock you, like, oh, I didn't know. Like, wow, that guy did that, or this lady had that experience, and it's not always good. You can find things that like, oh, I want to emulate that, or I will definitely not be like this guy.
Right.
I think that's kind of the nature of a lot of that. You grow up being led, right? And you see certain things that were frustrating to you or certain things you liked. And even if it was frustrating and it turned out to work out well for you in the end, you're like, okay, I learned a lesson from that. Maybe he wasn't just being, an asshole. Maybe he was doing this for my own good. But I had a bunch of leaders like that I was fortunate to have a lot of really good leaders. There's a few that I could name offhand that I disagreed with. But then looking back on it, a 23-year-old was disagreeing with a 35-year-old captain or, major. Like I was mad about something that probably I couldn't even understand at the time, right? Like trying to give him some grace,
He was looking from 30,000 feet and you were stuck.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here complaining about this thing right in front of my face, saying this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but... it wasn't always like that, but I'm sure there was a fair share of it. Sometimes they were just not good leaders. But I always had great leaders. My squad leader over there, Gibby Hernandez, phenomenal leader. He came from a machine gun background. I mean, he taught me everything I know about machine guns. I mean, we were out there constantly learning things from that guy. And I think the biggest thing I got from him was like, he was very tactically proficient, but he was, like loyal to his squad to the end. He would sacrifice himself any day of the week for the lowest ranking guy on our squad. And I admired that. I was like, that's
a leader.
That's what you need to be. So, taking bits of that, right? And then, other guys I've talked about before, my buddy Tim, just tactically proficient, was like a professional, knew everything about everything when it came to just proficiency. and tactics and planning and strategy. He was just a brilliant guy, super smart. I always wanted to be like that. Never really had the brains for it, but I would try. You got to have something to strive for. It's like seeking perfection, knowing that you'll never get there, but you still got to try it. And I had a great company, I had a great platoon. My squad was awesome. My team was great. And I think the time we were at, I mean, we were engaged in combat almost every day. You didn't have time for these little squabbling in between, or these politics, or this, I don't know, like my kids fight today, right? You could, anything, take anything on earth, take one of them and put it in between them, and they will fight over it. And there's a lot of people, we're back in the rear and, hanging out at Garrison or whatever, guys would be fighting, getting in fist fights all the time. But once you're over there, it was like, all right, we're all in this together. It's time to work. And that really made it, help it, like, clear it out. And, all mission focused. Mission focus was the key. But yeah, I mean, I definitely had a lot of really great leaders coming through there. I mean, across the board. I mean, all the way up to the to the colonel that was in charge of the battalion. Not a lot of guys get that. I know. I mean, I think everybody has a bad leader here and there. And I've talked about it before, but it's, you can sit there and just badmouth them all day and, resist and be a jerk, or, it's a bad environment for the unit to work in when everybody hates that guy or everybody hates anyone, right? If you don't like it, like, this lieutenant is probably 25, 26 years old, maybe fresh out of college, went to OCS, became a Marine Infantry officer. They're figuring it out too. I mean, nobody knows it all. So they're figuring it out too. So have a little grace with them and maybe try to help shape or in some way mentor along the way, especially if you have experience that maybe they don't have. Tends to be a little bit better. Now there's always that extreme where the guy's just out of control and won't listen to anybody. And then, a lot of times those things just work themselves out. Yeah. And they go away. Yeah. And you get somebody else.
So we get through that, and then, the next step, like, what made you decide, like, what's next, like special operations, and kind of knowing what that, what was that choice for you, and why did you want to go that route? What did it look like?
So after Ramadi, I went to Afghanistan for the first time. Same unit. So 3 deployments in a row with this unit. I was a squad leader now. I was a sergeant, E5 squad leader. I had 12 Marines underneath me. And it was just like a really cool, I'm used to urban, in the middle of a city, walking through streets and cars and all of this. And this was out in the middle of nowhere, southern Afghanistan. I mean, when we were the first Americans in this area. I mean, we didn't just drive up and we did a heliborne assault, like helicopters and waves landing in a field that looked like you landed on the moon. It was probably 2:00 in the morning and all this dust is kicking up, and, it's 100% illume out from the moon. And you just like get off this bird with your, your nods on. You're like, where am I? This was just a map that we looked at, and it was like, okay, I know where I'm at. This little compound village area is our first objective. We need to clear that. So it's like, all right, we got everybody. Let's go. And we lived, I mean, I always say it was like the most I've ever felt like a Marine was that deployment, because it was just so, I mean, the other ones we had buildings and air conditioning, if sometimes, decent food if you wanted it. You had a gym you could work out in. I mean, they're all, not like the gym here, right? But you had some things, right? You could get mail, you could make phone calls, and this was just like, some little huts in the middle of a field, basically, with some mountains off to the side. And like we dug fighting holes. We lived in the hole in the ground or in a big emptied out wadi. Sometimes we could go into a compound and get something to go overhead. I mean, I slept in a horse barn for a couple of nights. I remember taking an old nasty horse blanket and curling up with that because we didn't have blankets. Because that was the deployment I was talking about, the logistics guy who came through, that log train that came through, because they told us, hey, we're going to do a 7 to 10 day operation. So pack for that, which is like a ton of ammo, a little bit of food, a little bit of water, no change of clothes. It's 7 to 10 days. Let's go. We ended up staying there like 3.5, 4 months.
Wow.
So it was like, taking ground, holding ground, and then patrolling out of these little patrol bases that we would establish along a main route. And it was a different enemy. We were fighting Taliban now. Different tactics, different everything. I mean, the first night we got there, they were launching 107 rockets at us. And they were more tactically proficient. They've been doing this for forever. Literally forever. I mean, they were smarter about the way they fought too. They wouldn't just, try to mob a fully fortified base with 20 guys. That's not going to work out very well for you. I mean, they would be pretty sneaky with their tactics. I mean, my squad was ambushed twice. Very good. It's a miracle none of us died. But we were ambushed twice, very good. And I was just remember thinking, like, man, this is a different beast here. Like, we got to be smarter with the way we're doing things. This is not Iraq. This is Afghanistan. And again, learning, like, these are two separate conflicts, two separate times and space. So we got to really be smart about what we're doing. And but back to your original question, I remember sitting there. So, after a squad leader, the next kind of natural progression is a platoon sergeant, which is the head enlisted of a 30-man platoon. Him and the lieutenant are in charge of a platoon. And it's just not as, I'm sure in the past it probably has been, but kind of the way we were fighting, it's not like a combat leadership role. It's more of like an administrative, taking care of everything on the back end and making sure everybody's got what they need. But I mean, did they go out? Yeah, they did. But it wasn't like, charge, follow me, right? It was more of a, make sure you're mentoring the lieutenant and make sure he knows what's going on. But they have their own little kind of relationship going on there to kind of lead those 30 men into certain areas. So it just wasn't like the last thing I wanted to do was admin. Right. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I was coming up on, I think I had re-enlisted right before that. So I knew I was going to be in. And I remember one night, I mean, we're in these berms all day long, just fighting it out with these guys. And one night, you hear an AC-130 overhead, and I'm like, man, what is that? Then you see him just hammering a target right in front of us that we had been shooting at all day. And I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Like, where did that come from? And then you see some helos come in and you see, dudes fast roping. And I'm like, I want to do that. Like, to hell with this, sitting out here, it's like, imagine like a offensive and defensive line, just smashing in football all day. Like, that's what we were doing, kind of holding that ground so that these, wide receivers could go out and catch a touchdown pass, I was like, I want to do that. Like, I'm done with this. How do I do that? And I remember being back at the big base on our way out and just being like, hey, yeah, I think I want to go over to recon, the coolness scale, right? I never became a sniper. I was in a sniper team, but I never went to a sniper school, which I had fun on that team. So I kind of skipped. They were like, you can go to sniper school or you can be a squad leader. And I was like, I would have more fun, like my personality and being in charge of 12 guys. And, we'd go, I was 24, 25. No, I was 24 at this point. And I would go outside the wire with me and my 12 guys. And we'd go patrol for hours, get in gunfights, come back, 24 years old, in charge of all this stuff. Yeah, it still blows my mind when I think about it. I mean, even like getting into gunfights and jumping on a radio and calling a helicopter overhead to come and, shoot hellfires and whatever at these guys for me. I'm like, man, I feel like I would struggle with that now. How the hell did I do it when I was 24? Close air support was awesome. We'd have fixed wing and rotary wing, and we were there as part of a MU, so they were part of our package, and it was just awesome having that asset available. But, you're out there you really feel like an adult. You're like, all right, well, I can't be nervous about this. I can't show them that I'm nervous about this, at least, right? Like they're all looking at you. Like a gunfight happens, they're reacting, and then it's like, all right, what's the next step? And they're looking at you, and you're like, just pick a direction and go. You can't say, I don't know, right? Because you're going to lose them like that. And there's certain things that you can do if you can just show them that you care about them, and show them that their life and their livelihood is a genuine interest of yours. You're going to make the wrong decisions sometimes. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to make good decisions, right? But they'll stick with you if they know it's not just for your own personal gain, right? Or you're not, trying to save yourself. I mean, I remember some of these guys, it was one of the first times they had really gotten into a gunfight. They were younger. We were clearing a village, and we get to the very end of this. I mean, it was empty. I mean, this is the kind of thing I think about now that blows my mind. It's like, hey, we're going to, at 2:00 in the morning, we're going to go and we're going to clear this village. Small village, right? There's a road goes right down the middle. It's like, hey, first squad, you got the left one half. Second squad, you got the right one half. And third squad, you're in reserve. So when they start taking casualties, because you just expect it. And it's like, all right, well, here we go. 2:00 in the morning, we're clearing this village, and we're all working online, clearing through all these, and it's empty, which is just weird. And I'm like, man, this doesn't feel right. And we get to the very end, and as soon as we start kind of walking in the general direction, they were waiting for us in a dug-in position, and they just, unloaded on us, and we're moving left and right, trying to get out of direct fire because we were pretty exposed, and miraculously, nobody got hit. And we get up to this compound that they were shooting at us from, and, I had called the helicopter over to come and, soften the target a little bit for me. And I remember stacking on the wall of the gate, and this is, it's nighttime, you can barely see. And I remember looking back and seeing some of my younger guys, they had this kind of like, oh man, this is about to happen. Like, we're going into where they're at. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to happen. And they just looked like, scared's not the right word for it, but just nervous. And I just remember saying, all right, look, give me all your frags. Just give them to me. So I just start chucking these things over the wall, and then I go in first. And it was just like, look, I'm going to throw these. I'm going to go in there. I need you right behind me. Got it? Good. Let's go. Because usually the squad leader wouldn't go in first, right? Because it's, you got to have command and control of 12 guys. But I was like, these guys are kind of shook up by this. So I can get them in there. I can get them in there this way. So we go in there, and, we clear it, and it turned out for the better. But like from that point on, it was like, we're ready to go. And they're like, hell yeah, we're ready to go. Where are we going?
Leading from the front,
it was like that, like instant loyalty that was just awesome to have. And I couldn't have done any of this without them, right? They were fantastic. The whole squad, like my fire team leaders that I'd picked to be in charge of the fire teams, and just the way that we meshed and we worked together. We were like we got called up in the company to go do certain things that other squads wouldn't get called up to do, because we worked so well together, which was really cool. We had a lot of good, opportunities to do a lot of good out there, which was awesome. But it was, looking back on it now, again, I always go back to, like, I was 24,
Kid, man.
I know. Still not fully developed
Yeah.
in the front. But yeah, I see this thing happening. I want to do that. And, the hierarchy of cool, I said, hey, I'll go to recon. And like, oh, well, there's this new shiny thing called MARSOC. You should go check that out. And I was like, okay, I'll go check that out. And we got back and I was like, hey, I want to go do this thing. Nobody from my unit had gone there yet because it was so new. And I remember I was checking out and there was a first sergeant there. I can't remember his name. But I remember saying, like, hey, here's my paperwork. You just sign. I'm going to go to ANS assessment and selection for MARSOC. And he was just like, we'll see you when you fail and you come back. And he throws his paperwork to me. And I was like, thank you. That's the motivation I needed. Like, and I remember it to this day. He probably wouldn't even remember that conversation if I told him about it, but I want to be like, hey, I want to thank you I don't think you were doing that to motivate me. I think you were just kind of being, I'm trying to use my words wisely here. Not nice.
Yes.
We'll say that. And, but it was just what I needed to go. And then I just, it was all very new. And, we roll into assessment and selection. About a month later, started doing that. And that started the next 9 years of my career.
So that selection, just kind of summarize, what was that like? Obviously pretty difficult, I'm sure, many different ways.
Yeah, that was definitely more physically demanding. There's a huge swimming portion of it. You got to be very, very proficient in water. And I wasn't a great swimmer, but I learned how to be. A lot of rucking, 45 pounds on your back for long distances. I mean, all day, every day, just carrying a ruck. It was kind of weird because the way that they had set it up, and I'm sure it's like this today, like you weren't allowed to talk to anybody. When you were getting ready to go, you had to sew on, engineer tape. You were a candidate number. You had to sew it on over your name on your camis. So you weren't allowed to tell people what your name was, or you didn't wear rank. You were just candidate. I was candidate 26. You're just a candidate number. And I mean, you're in these squad bays, you got rack mates and, you whisper a little bit here and there, but you weren't supposed to talk to each other or know where you came from or know what your rank was. Cause we had officers, we had a lieutenant colonel in there with us. And, and every day you'd get up and there was a whiteboard and they would be like, hey, meet here at this time, this, that, and the other. And you'd go up to the cadre and you'd be like, hey, yeah, like, what about this? And they'd be like, candidate, take your instructions from the whiteboard. That was the only thing they would say to you. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we're going to be here at this time doing this thing. I won't ask any more questions. All right. And a lot of like land navigation and team, I guess, building or problem solving. You would get these, sometimes impossible tasks, and they would pick somebody to be in charge. And then you would have to talk to the guys, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it this way. Or you carry a lot of heavy things, a lot of long distances, and it really just breaks you down. And you see how well does a guy get frazzled and start screaming at people, or does he try to work with them? And, there's a lot to it, I'm sure, that I don't even know about. But you get through a lot of that, like a lot of land nav, like walking forever with a ruck on, I'm trying to think of what else we did in selection. I think it was when I went through, it was that section was about 3 weeks long, but I think I was like the 10th or 11th class to ever do it. So it was still developing along the way. But got selected. Because there's a lot of personality tests. There's a lot of psych evaluations you got to do along the way. And a lot of guys get dropped for that. You can't just be physically tough. You gotta, kind of be even keeled. And, there's some crazy people out there that try to do that, especially from the Marine Corps. They're not in there for the best reasons. So they got to make sure you're, kind of tactically, and there's a like a level of proficiency in everything that you do. And then I think we went back to the battalion and kind of had to hang out for about a month or two until ITC started, which is individual training course. I saw they just graduated class 34, and we were class 1, so a long time ago. And that was a lot of the same style of things, very physically demanding, but really going through a lot of basic skills all the way up to advanced skills. So, because you get guys that are, motor T or admin or intel that don't know a thing necessarily about offensive and defensive infantry tactics. So everybody's got to go through and learn those things and do. Kind of feels like you're in, infantry school again for a little while, but a lot of patrolling, a lot of shooting, flat range into house, shooting in the house and doing tactics. And there's an amphibious portion of it, and, where you're on boats and you're out in the ocean and you're, attacking, sneaking up on beaches and things like that. There's a whole section for special reconnaissance where you're kind of sneaking around doing patrol bases in the woods, and you're, using cameras and you're taking pictures of people and surveillance type stuff. Kind of like being sneaky and, reporting on objectives that are going to get attacked later or looked at later. And then it really just kind of culminates into like a final exercise where you get little to no sleep and no food. And of course it was wet. It was raining and cold when we went through. And, after 9 or so months, there was 33 of us that graduated when we went through. I think we started in the 90s because It drops a lot of people along the way. A lot of injuries drop guys, because people were tearing ACLs and breaking, bulging discs in their back and, what you name it, injury after injury. And then a lot of shooting dropped a lot of guys because got to be able to do it, but we got what we got. I mean, there's this whole thing, like, it's like, we always would say, like, we don't want any Rudies here. And, it's like, guys, Rudy from the football movie, obviously, he's got a heart of gold, tries super hard, but I mean, Rudy sucked in real life. I mean, he wasn't good, right? Like, your heart of gold can only take you so far in combat operations,
Right.
If you're in there and you can't hit the broadside of a barn with a rifle, I don't care how much you try and how well you really want to do it, right? You got to have a little bit of both.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we got through that, and then I went to 3rd Battalion and got on a team and deployed pretty quickly after that. We went to the Philippines a couple times.
So during that selection process, was there any one thing that really was the most difficult for you more than the other?
No, I learned, like when you're doing land nav, there's a couple ways you can do it, right? Like dead reckoning is one where you got your compass, and I know I got to go this direction, this azimuth for this many meters, and that'll take me right to, whatever I need to find. Let's say a flag, and that used to be the way we did it. That's how we learned how to do it. You just kind of line up your compass and you get a pace count and you walk in that direction, and, and then you do a little map check and like, yep, I should be seeing this. Okay, keep going. But I mean, I had to develop this. We had learned, handrails and backstops were the way to do it for a lot of stuff we were doing. So you're, all right, I'm here. I got to get there. There's a road to my left. I know I can't go past that, and there's this ravine to my right? Those are my handrails. I just got to stay in between there. And if I hit this mark, I've gone too far. So I need to walk in that general direction, or I can plan a route around certain, things to make it easier. And I had done that the first couple of days. We did like a week of land nav. You just get dropped off in the woods, and it's like, here's your points, plot them and go find it. And you're just gone all day walking. And And I had been doing the handrails and backstops, and I'm kind of doing this, and I'm coming in a good time. And then one day I was just like, man, it was like, imagine like a square, and I was in one corner, and it was like 500 yards this way, I can be at my thing. Or I can go up 400 and over 500, and it would take me 900 meters to get to this thing if I did what I normally do. And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna go straight at it because I can do this. And I'm in this just the thickest bush you've ever seen, fighting, going up and down. It was horrible. And I ended up almost coming in late and just exhausted by the end of the day. And I was like, man, I would have been there 3 hours ago and had to walk a little bit further if I would have just done it the right way. So that was like a big wake up call for me on like, okay, well, they teach you this stuff for a reason, let's start using it. And then, I think that was a big takeaway for me was that, and then getting presented like an impossible task. Like here's these stumps are sticking out of the ground. You have 2 2x4s, and you got to get your whole squad across, and you can't touch this, that, or the other, right? And you're like, it takes you about 5 seconds, and you're like, well, that's not possible with what we have. But they want to see if you just throw your hands up and say, well, we can't do it, so we quit. So it's like, hey, we're going to try. Let's try to. This thing that's been probably a strength for me, the saying throughout my whole career was kind of adapt and overcome, like negotiate the obstacle, right? Like, let's try to think of some way to do this. And instead of me just saying, we're going to do this, that, and the other, I say, hey, what do you guys think? Hey, look, I'm stuck. I don't see a way around this. Has anybody got any crazy ideas? I'm willing to try them all. And, we still didn't pass it, but at least it showed that we were trying to work together, I guess. Yeah. So, and I think that boded well for the reason why I was selected. So, yeah.
So you get to this unit that you're assigned to, probably goes back to the little bit of nervous feeling because now you're operating with guys that are different level,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And from my experience, going to different trainings, working with dudes, I'm like, man, I don't belong here. Like you get in your own head, right? You're seeing these guys, and what was that like once you first got in this unit and you're part of that? But what'd that feel like?
It was so like I was a very early ITC class, right? This whole model of making a raider was very new. But we had teams before I got there, and they would either take reconnaissance Marines and just make a team, or some other, there was a unit called FMTU, like Foreign Military Training Unit, kind of infantry guys, but would train foreign units, and they made up a majority of 3rd Battalion. And there was this pushback against us. It was almost like the opposite effect, where like we showed up because like, hey, we graduated from ITC. All right, we weren't raiders then, but we were whatever. We had done the things that you're supposed to do to be a raider. And most of these guys, they just kind of got grandfathered over. So they didn't have any specialized training per se. I mean, some of the recon guys did. They went to BRC or whatever, but it's still not the same level of what we just did. And man, when we got there was like this, oh, you think you're better than us because you went to ITC. And it's like, no, man, I just did what I was supposed to do, and I'm here now. So what do you want from me? And we got a lot of pushback from some of those, not all of them, but some of them. They would get really butthurt or like insecure. Yeah. Like it was like a job, like we were trying to take away their job, or they didn't rate to be there because they didn't do what we did. But, you'll have that everywhere. But that gets worked out. We got on the team. I mean, and I had a great team. There were some guys that were senior to me in both rank and age. So, I fell on a team with some great leaders on that team, and some reconnaissance guys, some not. But, once you put all that shit away and we're just dudes being dudes and trying to work together, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to get things done. So that kind of initial thing was there, but once that kind of got washed out and they actually saw us as an asset and not some liability who thought they were walking around like they've done everything, it got a lot easier, and I used to get so frustrated with that because I remember being on a range, and when I was at ITC, and there's this guy, he was sitting there yelling how we're trying to get into his gun club and this and that. And we need to do this. We want to be in his gun club. And I remember thinking like I know I'm new here, but I'm not new to the Marine Corps. And, and you find out later about this guy, like he never deployed and, he just trained for 4 years and now he's teaching a pistol course. And I just want to be like, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Anyway, so yeah, teams were solid over there. I don't know about the other battalions. I'm sure they had the same experiences, but at 3rd Raider Battalion, I mean, the teams we all worked together. We were very, because we would rip out a lot with each other. So we all were buddies. We all went to schools and different things together. So we all knew each other, but it was actually it was like a cool little environment. You would do these like company-wide training things where you'd have to work with the other teams, and you got buddies that you went to ITC with, or you were in the infantry with, or whatever. You met at a school along the way, and you get to work with them, and you go and deploy to different geographic areas. And, we never like deployed next to one of them. We would always either replace each other or you're out by yourself a lot. So it was always cool running into those guys.
So how long, once you got onto the teams, how long until you guys were deployed?
Man, let me think here. Probably like 4 or 5 months, maybe. We had a deployment coming up, and we didn't have a lot of deployments back then, right? That's why, I mean, we were geographically separated. A lot of 1st and 2nd Raider battalions were going like Afghan or Iraq, but there was still the rest of the world that had issues. So a lot of 3rd Battalion would go to all the other places where there's conflict. And my company just happened to land in the Philippines for 2 deployments. Then we went over to Tunisia. So we got moved from PACOM over to AFRICOM. They're constant. They're probably still shifting all over the place now. I don't even know. But then we started really working the African problem for a while there. So, but like a whole different experience deploying, with a team where you're training and working with this foreign unit, and like the amount of responsibility just gets increased, tenfold. Being a staff sergeant, and I'm like in charge of a camp. At probably, I don't know, 28 years old, maybe, I don't even know. And my partner force liaison is Lieutenant Colonel in the Filipino Special Forces. And I'm just like sitting down having coffee with him every morning and talking about training and strategy and this operation that we're all going to go on together. And it was just a different world. A lot of training, a lot of getting those guys kind of out the door and into the fight. But you learn a lot. I mean, you got to really put on your diplomatic hat. And, there's infighting or there's disagreements, and you got to go and, make sure that the camp doesn't turn into an all out coup or something out there. So yeah, I mean, it was chill. It was a cool deployment, couple deployments.
So as you go through those, how many times did you deploy into that unit?
With that unit, I deployed 5 times.
Wow.
So yeah, by the time I was done with my tenure, so I did 5 years at 3rd Raider Battalion, then I moved up to the company, and I worked a different program, more intelligence based, but it was all Africa work I was doing, and a little bit of Europe. Kind of 1 and 2 man teams out in the middle of nowhere running operations. And I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years, did a couple deployments worth. So 5 total at that command. And then I ended up, moving again. I'm always like, hey, well, I've kind of maxed out here. What's next?
Yeah. So after MARSOC, kind of came to an end there. What was next?
Yeah, it was like, there's always this like need to the next thing, right? and I had heard about this opportunity that came up, and I went to another assessment, another selection. Ended up spending the last 6 years of my career at a special missions unit, which was an awesome experience, but something we can always talk about later. So,
Yeah, no,
it was a good time though.
sounds awesome.
Yeah, but
So,
that was it. 20 years, 10 deployments. And, now we're back here in Evansville, where it all started. So
get you back in a band.
yeah,
Get you some film schools. Get you those things you never got to finish up.
I think those times are gone. I still play guitar every once in a while. It's just kind of like a fun outlet to do. But yeah, film, that's long ago. And I sit here and think about what the hell I would have become if I would have pursued that, I'd probably be living in my mom's basement right now. So
I definitely want to talk a little bit about, or a lot about what you do now.
yeah.
But I think that's a whole different episode because
Sure.
it deserves the time,
Yeah.
to really let people know what that is. Just kind of wrapping up, like all of your experience and your years of deployment and all the things you did. What do you think you bring back that you still use daily, that got you through those times that maybe listeners can understand, in that transition, as you and I have talked, it's not easy, man, coming out of that world into this world. And I never really understood the similarities between law enforcement and military. I was never in the military, right?
Yeah.
But when you leave that world of feeding the monster every day,
Yeah.
and it's gone, the monster gets hungry. It's like, oh man, like what's next, right? So, now that you're out of that world into the normal world, what do you use daily, or what does that look like for you to get through that? And
Yeah. I would say I'm still in the middle of my transition out of the military. I mean, it's been 1 year and 4 months roughly. It's still pretty fresh, but I'm starting to get a handle on it now, I think. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be. And a lot of that, well, most of it was self-induced, and it's been a wild ride, but I would say that some things that I kind of got from the military that have kind of helped me along the way. I would say perspective is probably the number one thing that I bring now into, this life of, I think I was saying, I've seen, the poorest people on earth, people that don't own a thing and maybe have a tent to go over their head, and they got a family. Like for example, my kids are, they get all this stuff for their birthday and, this and that. We try to be, have them have a great birthday and everything. And if I even like for a second think that maybe they're not being grateful for it, I always tell them a story. I mean, when I was in Africa, one of the times there was a kid across the street who lived, they were like the workers for the family that lived there. And workers is like a loose term. But there was this little boy, he was probably 4 years old, and I would see him every day playing in a dirt lot, and the only thing he had, he never wore pants or underwear. He just had a t-shirt. He'd be naked out there, and he had an old paint roller on a stick, and he would just push that thing around. And it was like the happiest kid I've ever seen. Wow. And I'm like, that is, and you get the wrong dinosaur, and there's like this disappointment in your kid's face sometime. And I always think back to that, like, man, you don't even know how good you have it, So I think perspective, I've been able to have a lot more grace with people and situations. Like we were talking about, like sharing, not comparing, right? Like it was hard for me to kind of have this perspective of what real problems are, and then to come home and kind of what we were alluding to earlier, these people that are just, destroyed if they're, if they have to wait 10 minutes in line at Starbucks to get a latte, and when you have things that comfortable, it's like everything else that's negative fault. I mean, they like the gossiping that comes with some of these people that I know, and the just complete lack of being thankful for what they have. It was really hard for me. It's almost like, you don't know how good you have it kind of attitude. Like, stop whining and stop complaining, but that's not the answer either. I've found out, we kind of, and I've talked to some friends about this before. It's like we get this perspective, and, we deploy and we do all these things, and then we come back, or you're working and you come back, and it's like, all these people don't know how good they have it, but they want to complain about it every step of the way. We used to call them bubble people, the people that just live in this bubble of everything's always going to be okay. The government's going to take care of me. There's adults somewhere, and my way of life is going to be unchanged and just comfortable for the rest of my life. And, and I used to like really criticize that and just think like, man, like, you don't understand. Like, if the slightest, if something real were to actually happen, you would be destroyed. Any real, and then not to discredit people's experiences. There's people that have experienced things way worse than I have. But I'm just generally speaking, or broadly speaking, this bubble of, mentality. And I remember one day just having this thought that, like, yes, there's some people that live in the bubble, and there's some people that don't, but that's okay, because it means that you and everybody else outside of that bubble are doing their job. If you weren't, then that bubble wouldn't exist. Like, I have a little sister, I'm not saying she lives in that bubble, but I don't want her to have to worry about, getting blown up by terrorists every day she goes to work. I don't want her to have to worry about, a car bomb, in the middle of a city, or some of these things that you see, right? I don't want her to have to think like that. So it's okay. And then, like, once I kind of got to that point where it's like, it's okay. Some people just don't understand. And, I certainly don't know everything. So we just have different perspectives, and, if they're a little rude to you, just have a little grace, and, maybe they just don't understand. But I used to compare, like being in special operations to the Matrix. There's like the blue pill and the red pill. It's like you have this way of thinking, and you think that this thing is this certain way, but you get this option to kind of peek behind the curtains and really see how it all works and forms, and certainly not to the highest levels, right? But to a certain level more than the average civilian is privy to, we'll say. But once you take that pill, you can't go back. Like, you can't unsee it, right? You're living in the real matrix now, the real world now. And I think probably cops have a lot of that too. I mean, you get to see the kind of, some of the horrible things that a lot of people just either refuse to see or shut out or never see it, because they're still living in that, in the matrix where everything's just kind of normal. And I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back if I could. I'm glad I took the blue pill. Just life's a little bit different now that you did. You don't have the luxury of, complaining about anything anymore, but for guys transitioning, I would say that would be a big part of it. I find a lot of vets, especially younger vets, are really disgruntled with civilians. Like, they just don't know. They haven't done the things that I've done. Like, it's a competition, and it's like, no, they haven't, so what? Like, just take what you've done and be proud of it. You don't have to shit on everybody else who hasn't, it doesn't mean they haven't done anything in their life, right? Like, have a little grace and just be proud of that, and understand there's some separate worlds there. There's different backgrounds, just like everything else in life, right? Like, I think if they can get over themselves and about how these hard things that they've done and the, you know, the gunfights that they've been in or whatever it is, right? And just know that, you know, when you go into a Walmart and you're just sitting there criticizing everybody in there and about, like, doesn't mean you've got it all together either. If you're the only one in there, you know, bad mouthing everybody in there, maybe look in the mirror and be like, why am I don't even know these people. I've never talked to them. Maybe they have a awesome story, experience something that I've never experienced, or maybe I wouldn't be able to get through it like they did. You know, you can find some strength in that. I think that would be my number one, would just be like, take a step back, be proud of what you've done, but don't put it in the forefront of your whole identity, right? It's not, I used to get so fired up when I would come home and people like, oh, this is Paul, he's a Marine. Oh, he's a Marine. I'm like, yeah, I'm also a father. I'm a husband. I like to shoot a bow. I mean, I like to do a lot of things. It's, you know, I think it's easy to identify you as that, but some guys just can't let it go on, you know, this sliver of time that they did something great and incredible. And like that meme says, you'll never be as cool as you were when you were 19. There's a lot of truth to that. You won't be. You did incredible things, be proud of it, but you don't have to go and badmouth everybody else who didn't, right? So having grace with everybody in your community would be probably the number one step, I would say, because, you know, you just don't know what you don't know. And then finding a tribe, you know, finding a group. I mean, if you're a young man, you know, finding a group of young men that think like you, or at least have similar experiences, maybe not, but you have some common bonds there, which you can relate with them, right? You don't have to, it's like you go to a party, you know, like with your wife's friend is having a party. It's like, I find myself in this all the time, right? And I go to like my wife's friend's thing, and there's all these guys in like golf shirts, you know, and, you know, they're doctors and they're lawyers, and there's me, you know, tatted up and just kind of standing there. And it's like, oh, here we go, you know, and I want to be that guy, like, oh, I hate everybody in here, but I'm like, no, I'm going to go talk to them. And I end up having a great time every time because I learned something new. But I would prefer to be with, you know, my people. But it's like having that outlet so you're not constantly feeling like you're alone. You're at that Walmart and everybody's different than you, right? Like having those guys around that you can call and you can text, and hell, like we do on a daily basis almost, right? It's like just having a sounding board to bounce ideas off of. We go do jujitsu, or we go shoot, or whatever we like to do, right? Go have a drink or whatever it is. But like finding that kind of tribe, because I mean, a lot of these guys, I was living in the barracks for 4 years. And it was just nothing but bros all around me, just doing all kinds of wild things, right? And it was awesome. And you come out here and then you're just like, well, I don't have any of my buddies around anymore, you know? But that would be probably number two. And then number three would just be really leaning, if you have a family, really leaning in on them, you know? I had really put my family kind of in second place, and hell, even probably further down the line to that whenever I was deployed or when I was in, you know, work unfortunately really came first a lot of times. But, you know, I heard people say this, you know, hey, you know, the Marine Corps is going to leave you someday, but your family's always going to be there, or they're not, you know? And it was like, man, yeah. Truth. So take care of your family, because they're going to be the ones that are there when you're 90 years old, you know, or they won't, because you've sacrificed it all. And if you have sacrificed it, like I had, you have to make amends for that as quick as you can, and try to really just lean on your family for support. But you got your friends, you got your family, and then you just kind of have a little bit of grace with everybody else out there that's just trying to get through their day too. You know, somebody cuts me off or whatever, I usually just smile and say, he's probably just got something more important than me today. Even though back in my mind, I'm like, you know, getting fired up.
But it's amazing what that does for you personally though, right?
Oh yeah.
instead of making you want to feed that monster. Right?
Oh yeah.
You know, because that's where I was at when I left. It was like somebody cut me off. I'm like, okay, bro, all right,
Yeah.
right. I wanted to take it to the next level instead of that dude's probably late for an interview.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know what's going on with that dude's life. And at the end of the day, okay, cut me off. He'll delay me 2 seconds. I'll go on about my way and he'll go on about his way.
Yeah.
But it is perspective, man. I think that's some really sound advice.
I mean, you're in a unique position to have this perspective that, I mean, most people around here, I wouldn't say most, I don't know the numbers, but not a lot have traveled throughout the world and have seen the things and experiences that maybe you have done, or go and see these things that you dealt with on a daily basis as a police officer. You know, like some of the things, my brother, he's a cop in Newburgh, and I have buddies that serve, and it's like the things that they tell me they deal with on a daily basis. I couldn't do that. There's no way. I would lose my temper so fast. And, you know, it's just like, just be thankful that you have that perspective and it's in the back of your pocket if you need it. You know, turning some of those survival skills into assets later on how to use things, like, you know, even like I struggle with patience, especially with 4 little kids. And whenever one of my kids is just on one screaming at me, I've been stopping and smiling and just saying, hey, thanks God for giving me this opportunity to exercise patience once again. And I say it out loud because it makes me laugh because how crazy it sounds, right? But it makes me laugh and it brings me down just a little bit to where I'm like, okay.
But isn't it funny, though, because you'll pray for something like, hey, God, show me to have patience. I'm showing you, bro, right here with your 4 little kids.
Exactly.
You're not paying attention. So I'm going to make them cry more and fight more.
I'm going to let you lose it and then come back and feel terrible about it. You know, it's just like, hey, I'm giving you plenty of opportunity
I'm gonna
every
expose
day.
your weakness right now.
Yeah. We'll see if you really want me to help you or not, right? So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot better advice out there, but
I think that's great.
Those are the things that help me. It's really just, you know, slowing down and just kind of enjoying everything every day. Just being grateful for what you have.
You know, and as we go on for different episodes and different guests, like, you know, that's a big part of what I want this to be, is like, you know, from our guest experiences, our experiences, like how do we push that information out to help somebody else, maybe, you know, from some situations we've seen or been in, or our guests have, you know, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, bro. Like, that's what it's about for me. That's a real legacy, you know. It's like,
it is.
You know, how can some of our dark times shine some light on some other people's times, you know, where they may not have to experience that darkness the way that some of us have. So.
And you know, and we've always got something to learn from somebody else too. You know, I mean, it's like the things that I find myself really learning from other people every day is kind of wild if you just listen to them, you know, instead of like, well, no, but I've done all these things, so, you know, your story is not important to me. It's really like, no, let me hear you out. Okay.
You know, one of the biggest things that I've learned is, you know, over the last couple of years is trauma is trauma. You're not always like, you don't understand what it's like to see the things that I've seen or be in gunfights or do those things. But I also don't understand what it's like to be molested, right? I don't understand what it's like to, you know, trauma is trauma at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that was really came clear to me in the last couple of years.
Same here. Yeah. I mean, back to that, you know, sharing, not comparing, right? You know, it's, you got some of these, you know, folks, and I think there's a small part of me, like there's a reason why you might want to compare in certain situations. I think those are extremes, but like you have some folks that are just like, yeah, you know, I'm traumatized from my drill instructor just yelling at me in boot camp, and I've got disability for that, and I just want to be like, I have to like really be like, oh. Yeah, it sounds terrible. Anyway, you know, it's like, don't sit there and, I guess the point would be, don't dismiss someone's trauma.
Because you never really know, right?
And people are going to take advantage of it like they do everything else in life. It's just, you know, there's some people out there that they just want to tell people their story. And if you listen to it, it might help them.
Yeah.
So.
I love it, man. Well, I think that wraps us up for today again, man. Bro, I'm super excited about this opportunity and grateful that you're willing to be part of it, and looking forward to getting some different walks of life on here and just having some real discussions, man.
I'm excited to see where it goes,
man,
brother.
Me too, bro. I
Thanks
appreciate
for having
you, man.
me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.